Hello, this is Coding Gicha for full-stack developers. This time I will explain vim-buffet, which visualizes file buffers loaded into Vim as tabs and provides useful buffer-related functions. I will also explain Vim settings related to vim-buffet. Let's check the list of Vim packages using vim-es. I already installed vim-buffet in the previous video. If it's not installed, you can easily install it using vim-add. Let's navigate to the .vim directory. Let's open the vim-rc.vim file using vim. To view vim-buffet's default settings, I'll comment out the relevant settings. Let's exit Vim to apply the changes. To test the feature of displaying file buffers in tabs, I need to load multiple files. Since the same process will be repeated every time, I'll save and load them as sessions. Let's create a session directory to store the sessions. Sessions will be covered in more detail in a separate video. Open the vim-rc.vim in Vim. Vim-buffet is a package that visualizes file buffers in tabs. Even if there's only one file buffer, a tab line appears at the top. To load multiple files, I'll launch 𝓿𝓲𝓶 with F9. Let's open another file. The newly opened file buffer will also appear as a tab next to the previously opened file buffer tab. Let's move focus to the 𝓿𝓲𝓶 window with Ctrl F9. Let's open another file. You should now see 3 file buffer tabs. Finally, let's open one more file. All 4 file buffers will now be displayed as tabs. To the left of the file buffer name, which is displayed in tabs, you'll see an icon corresponding to the file type. This is thanks to vim-devicons. If you don't have vim-devicons installed, these icons won't appear. Currently, file buffers are displayed in tabs, but if you haven't installed vim-buffet, you'll need to use the command line to view the buffer list. Type :ls to display the buffer list. You can move to the corresponding buffer by entering the number shown in the list after :b. With 4 files open, let's save them as a session for later use and get started. Type :ls to check the buffer list again. There's another buffer not listed. The buffer number 2 is 𝓿𝓲𝓶, which is not listed. This is because 𝓿𝓲𝓶 is also loaded as a buffer. Because the numbers in the buffer list aren't consecutive, you need to check the buffer list and execute the command to properly navigate to the corresponding buffer. The gicha.vim file is the 3rd buffer in the list, but its buffer number is 4. You need to type : before to move. Close the current buffer. The gicha.vim file buffer disappeared, and focus shifted to the previous buffer, vim-rc.vim file. Because buffer numbers aren't sequential, another number is missing, and number 4 is also gone. Therefore, using :b followed by the buffer number to move can be confusing, and you have to check the buffer list every time to move correctly. A better approach is to use the appropriate methods for moving to the first buffer, last buffer, previous buffer, next buffer, etc. Entering :bl moves to the last buffer. To move to the first buffer, use :bf. To move to the next buffer, use :bn. To move to the previous buffer, use :bp. You can also enter the number of moves after :bn. You can also enter the number of moves after :bp. Let's summarize some frequently used buffer-related commands. Moving buffers, a basic feature of Vim, requires some thought. A more convenient method is needed, and vim-buffet goes beyond simply visualizing buffers in tabs, it also provides more convenient features. Vim-buffet displays a tab line at the top showing file buffers, but when only one file is open, this tab line is unnecessary. Vim-buffet allows you to move between buffers by buffer order, not number. Therefore, all display the index in the tab. Buffers are separated by a filter character, which feels a bit clunky. Since the buffer is spaced one space before and after, even without a buffer separator, it's spaced two spaces apart. Vim can use multiple pages as tab pages. The default icon for tab pages in vim-buffet is the sharp symbol. I'll change it to a more page-like icon. I'll discuss tab pages in more detail in a separate video. I generally prefer a monochromatic UI. If the UI is too bright and vibrant, it can distract your attention from your workspace, disrupting your focus. Rather than using primary colors, using one or two common colors or a monotone and utilizing saturation and brightness will help you focus more on your workspace without being distracted. On the other hand, using too many primary colors can make accent colors difficult to distinguish. To apply the changes, let's close Vim. Let's reopen the file vim-rc.vim in Vim. Only one file buffer is open, vim-rc.vim. Since I've set the tab line to only show when there are two or more buffers, the tab line is not visible. Let's load a session that had 4 buffers open. The tab line is visible. Vim-buffet's default color scheme was somewhat vibrant, but it has been changed to a more muted color scheme. Only the current buffer is highlighted with a brown background color for easy identification. Let's open additional file buffers using the 𝓿𝓲𝓶. If there are more buffers than can be displayed on the tab line, hidden buffers are indicated by angle brackets on the left. The number displayed near the angle brackets indicates the number of hidden buffers. To focus on vim-buffet, I'll close the 𝓿𝓲𝓶. Let's move to the hidden left buffer location. Now that the buffers on the right are hidden, the number of hidden buffers is displayed on the right. Vim-buffet provides a function that allows you to navigate through buffer order. You can map this to a shortcut for easier navigation. The leader can be set to a specific key and the default is \. The tab line displays up to buffer 5 and there are 2 more hidden buffers to the right, so the last buffer is buffer 7. Let's move to buffer 7 by typing \7. When switching buffers, you can enter a number before the \ to move the focus to the corresponding line. If hidden buffers are on both sides, angle brackets will appear on both the left and right. Let's move to the vim-rc.vim file buffer. Let's change the angle brackets indicating hidden buffers to a more modern arrow symbol. Let's save the vim-rc.vim file, save the session with the increased buffer count to 7, and exit. You can also load a session directly by using the S option when running Vim. The icon indicating hidden buffers on the right has been changed to a more modern arrow symbol. The icon indicating hidden buffers on the left has also been changed to a modern arrow symbol. Let's move to the 6th buffer and see what it looks like when the hidden buffer appears on both sides. Let's move to the 2nd buffer. Let's wipe out the 2nd buffer. Even if buffers are wiped out in the middle, the sequential numbering maintains the sequence. Regardless of the buffer number, moving to the 3rd buffer is done with \3. Let's run 𝓿𝓲𝓶. I'll reopen the filetype.vim file that was wiped out previously. With the 𝓿𝓲𝓶 window open, I'll wipe out the buffer with bw. The window containing the buffers will also close, leaving only the 𝓿𝓲𝓶 window. I'll reopen the filetype.vim file in 𝓿𝓲𝓶. The vim-buffet provides custom commands for commands that are inconvenient or unsupported by the default buffer-related commands. Redefined commands starting with an uppercase B can wipe out a buffer without closing the window. A command is also provided to wipe out all but the current buffer. Simply type only after a colon and uppercase B. Commands provided by vim-buffet can be forcefully wiped out by adding an exclamation mark to the end. Let's quit Vim. Let's reload a saved Vim session. Using only Vim's basic functions, I'll close all buffers except the current buffer. The commands for closing buffers are bd and bw. bd simply removes the buffer from the list, while bw wipes out the buffer. I'll use %bd to clear the list of all buffers. I can use E# to retrieve the last buffer being edited. This is possible because the buffer remains. Finally, I'll close the unnamed buffers that aren't listed. This method will be useful if you haven't installed vim-buffet. I skipped over the colors I applied to vim-buffet without explaining them, so I'll briefly explain. I personally prefer a minimal UI, so I've set the colors to a minimal monotone. The styles applied to vim-buffet are reset to the default when Vim starts. To ensure that your changes persist across Vim restarts, you must set them within the buffet set custom colors function. The numbers set for the foreground and background colors in the terminal are the 256 terminal ANSI color code. Let's exit Vim and learn about the 256 terminal ANSI color code. If you have ANSI installed, you can easily check the 256 terminal ANSI color codes from the command line. The 256 color palette is an indexing system that uses predefined color codes. The 256 terminal colors are divided into 3 areas: 16 colors from 0 to 15, 216 colors from 16 to 231, and 24 colors from 232 to 255. The first area, 16 colors, is a 4-bit color palette defining 8 colors: black, red, green, yellow, blue, magenta, cyan, and white, each divided into dark and light color groups. Since each system uses its own color definition for the 16 colors, the colors may vary across different systems. Colors may also vary across different OS environments or even across different versions of the same distribution. The second area, 216 colors, defines colors corresponding to 6 to the power of 3, with each RGB colors divided into 6 levels. Finally, 24 colors represent achromatic colors with 24 levels of brightness. The .vim directory is where Vim settings are stored. I prefer to use it not only for configuration but also for storing Vim-related tasks. Since sessions are stored in the .vim/session, they can be reflected in the Git repository. I'll add the session directory to the .gitignore. The session directory has disappeared from the Git status. Instead, .gitignore appears. I'll also use vim-ep to reflect the changes in the Vim Integrated Management Git repository. Thank you for watching.